In the year 410 AD, something happened that had not occurred in nearly 8 centuries. The city of Rome, once the center of an empire stretching from Britain to Egypt, was captured and sacked by foreign forces. For many in the ancient world, this event was more than just a military loss. It was a symbol of imperial failure, a turning point in the long unraveling of Roman power in the West. But the sack of Rome didn't come out of nowhere. It was the product of decades of internal instability, failed diplomacy, and shifting cultural realities. This was not a single moment of collapse, but the symptom of a deeper structural transformation. In this video, we'll explore the events that led to the sack of Rome in 410 AD. We'll look at the declining structures of the Western Empire, the ambitions of the Visigothic leader Alaric, the failure of negotiations, and the meaning Romans, both pagan and Christian, assigned to the unthinkable. Rather than a story of sudden destruction, this is a story of gradual erosion, political missteps, and the limits of imperial power in the face of change. To understand why Rome was vulnerable in the year 410 AD, we need to go back several decades. The Western Roman Empire was already in decline, its finances strained, military ranks increasingly filled by foreign soldiers, and internal cohesion unraveling. One of the last stabilizing forces was the general Flavius Stilicho. A half-Vandal who rose through the ranks of the Roman army, Stilicho served as regent for the young Emperor Honorius. Despite his background, Stilicho saw himself as a loyal servant of the Roman order. He fought to preserve Roman control in Italy, even negotiating temporary truces with Alaric and repelling other barbarian incursions. But Stilicho's position was precarious. He had enemies in the court who viewed him with suspicion. Some resented his influence, others distrusted his barbarian ancestry. In 408, he was accused of treason and executed by order of Honorius. Stilicho's death was a major turning point. Not only was the Western Empire now without its most competent military commander, but thousands of federated Gothic troops loyal to Stilicho were massacred or expelled. Many of them fled to Alaric, swelling his ranks and fueling his grievances. At the same time, political leadership was paralyzed. Honorius remained largely inactive in Ravenna, issuing edicts but offering no military leadership. The Senate in Rome struggled to act independently, and ties with the Eastern Empire had grown strained. Without Stilicho to balance diplomacy and defense, the Western Empire drifted toward crisis. It was into this vacuum that Alaric stepped, no longer a frustrated ally, but a calculating opportunist facing an empire with no coherent strategy. With Stilicho gone and the Western Empire leaderless, Alaric re-emerged not merely as an enemy of Rome, but as a political actor trying to secure stability for his people. Far from a mindless invader, he was a product of the Roman world, educated in its ways, fluent in its politics, and aware of its weaknesses. Alaric's goal was not the destruction of Rome, but recognition. He wanted land for his people, official status as a federated group within the empire, and a legitimate place in the Roman order. His early campaigns in Italy were aimed at pressuring the imperial court to negotiate, but the government in Ravenna, under Emperor Honorius, remained largely unresponsive. After Stilicho's death, Alaric advanced into Italy in 408 AD and blockaded Rome. This first siege was a calculated attempt to force a political settlement. Rome suffered severe shortages. Eventually, the Senate agreed to pay a large ransom and grant concessions to Alaric. But Honorius, protected in Ravenna and surrounded by hardline advisors, refused to formalize the deal. Alaric lifted the siege temporarily, hoping for a better outcome. He even proclaimed a rival emperor, Priscus Attalus, as leverage. An act meant not to destroy Rome, but to coerce cooperation. But Attalus proved ineffective, and once again, negotiations fell apart. When Alaric returned to Rome in 410, it was with fewer illusions. His campaign had been a mix of military action and political maneuvering, but every diplomatic overture had failed. What followed was not just a military conquest, it was the consequence of Rome's inability to engage with a world that had changed. On August 24th, 410 AD, the Visigoths entered the city of Rome. A slave, possibly acting in desperation or sympathy, opened the Salarian gate. The Gothic army poured in, ending centuries of Roman security and psychological invincibility. The sack lasted for 3 days. While Rome was not burned to the ground, nor wholly destroyed, the symbolic weight of the event was enormous. Homes were looted, aristocratic estates ransacked, and many citizens were killed or enslaved. Temples and public buildings were damaged. The city's economic wealth, its artworks, and its sacred relics were carried off. But it was not unrestrained brutality. Alaric, though a conqueror, gave orders to respect Christian sites. Churches such as St. Peter's Basilica became places of refuge, spared from violence. Alaric's Christian beliefs, he was an Arian, may have influenced this restraint, as did his long-standing familiarity with Roman customs. The human impact, however, was undeniable. Refugees streamed out of the city. The population, already in decline, dwindled further. Nobility fled to safer cities or across the sea. In some regions, news of the sack caused panic. People feared that the entire Roman world was about to unravel. This was not the first time a Roman city had been pillaged, but it was the first time in 800 years that Rome itself, the capital of the ancient world, had fallen to an enemy force. For many Romans, the sack was not just a loss of security, it was the loss of meaning, of order, and of belief in the old systems that had once made the empire strong. In the aftermath of the sack, Roman society searched for meaning. For many, the fall of their city challenged deeply held assumptions about Rome's eternal status. Pagan elites blamed the abandonment of traditional gods. They argued that Christianity had weakened Rome's divine protections. But Christian leaders responded forcefully. Augustine of Hippo, writing soon after, argued in The City of God that no earthly city, not even Rome, was everlasting. His work encouraged Romans to look beyond politics for meaning. These differing reactions highlight how the sack was more than a military loss. It marked a shift in how Romans viewed themselves and their world. The sack of Rome in 410 AD was not the end of the Roman Empire, but it was a signal, loud and undeniable, that the world was changing. Rome's symbolic fall shattered the illusion of imperial permanence and forced those living through it to rethink what power, identity, and civilization meant. In its immediate aftermath, the Western Empire continued to exist, but in a weakened state. The Visigoths soon moved on to Gaul, and then Spain, establishing their own kingdom. Rome never regained its former status, not as a capital, nor as the unquestioned heart of the empire. Yet, from this disruption emerged new ideas. Christian theology, particularly through Augustine, would come to shape the intellectual life of the medieval world. New centers of power developed. The Western Roman aristocracy adapted or was replaced. And over time, the memory of Rome became more important than its actual political authority. In that sense, the sack of 410 was not merely a historical event, it was a turning point in the story of Europe. a marker between the classical world and what would follow. Understanding what led to that moment and how people responded to it helps us better understand how societies adapt to crisis, negotiate identity, and come to terms with change. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating historical events. Thanks for watching, and until next time.